Welcome to the next expert talk of CloudDNA. Today we are talking about SAP BTP Security again. And as you might know from the previous expert talks and also from our blogs, the architecture of the BTP looks as follows. So we have a global account on top. The global account is assigned to you by SAP. So whenever you purchase a license for the business technology platform, no matter which license model you're using, you're being assigned a global account. There is different license models. There is subscription, there is the Cloud Platform Enterprise Agreement, there is pay-as-you-go, and there is also a partner pay-as-you-go available. But you will always get a global account per license model. And the authentication of the users in the global account is usually against the SAP ID service. So we have the SAP ID service. Here, the SAP ID service is by default connected to the global account. Or the other way around, the global account is connected to the ID service. So you can use your S users, and if you have a C user or a P user, or as an SAP employee, an I or an D user, you can use these users to authenticate against the global account. And we have to distinguish between authentication and authorization. Authentication is to prove that you are the person you pretend to be. And authorization is the check behind that you are allowed to do something. And below the global account, we have sub-accounts. So here we have our so-called sub-accounts. And this is where everything happens in the sub-account. So here in the sub-account, you have the services, you have the subscriptions, and here basically the functionality is running. The global account is more or less just for administrative purpose, and also of course for the licensing and so on. The sub-account can also be connected against the SAP ID service, but you might have already an infrastructure for authentication in place, like an Azure Active Directory or an ADFS from Microsoft, or any other provider, of course. But here I'm going to show you, as an example, Azure Active Directory. And you can connect the sub-account directly against the Azure Active Directory using the SAML protocol, Security Assertion Markup Language. This means that the user management is done here in the Azure AD, and you can authenticate against the Azure ID and use the information that's coming back to get the corresponding role collections assigned in the sub-account, or at least to do the authentication, maybe also without some authorization stuff. The problem is this doesn't work with the global account. You cannot connect Azure AD directly, but there is another service from SAP that you usually get free of charge with your BTP license. This is the SAP Identity Authentication Service, SAP IAS. The IAS is part of the SAP Cloud Identity Services. The other part is the Identity Provisioning Service that we will not cover here, but you can also use this for authenticating your users and for user management. So you can manage your users here and connect the sub-account against the IAS, but since the end of 2022, you are also able to connect the global account against the against the SAP Identity Authentication Service. And here we can use, if we are in the Cloud Foundry environment, we are using OpenID Connect, OIDC. But basically, if you would like to do so, you can also use SAML, or if you're running in the Neo environment, you can use the SAML protocol here as well, of course. There is a lot of differences. We have another video on this, on the differences between SAML and OIDC, but you can use this one. Still not working against Azure AD. But there is another option. You can use the IAS as a proxy to any third-party identity provider. The only prerequisite is that the identity provider that you would like to connect in the proxy mode supports either the SAML or the OIDC protocol. So here we can have either SAML or OpenID Connect and use this as a proxy. This means if you authenticate against the global account, if you would like to access the global account with your user, you're redirected via the IAS, so it goes this way here, down to the Azure Active Directory. You are authenticating here with your Azure AD password or whatever security measures you have here. You can have a two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, and then you will be also authenticated on the global account by the assertion that's coming back here. And there is one more thing that we need to talk about, because we are just talking about authentication so far. We also have to talk about authorization. The authorization concept in the BTP is pretty easy. We have something called role collections. So we have role collections on the global account and also on the sub-account level. And the role collection is nothing else than a collection of roles. But the thing is that you cannot assign the roles directly to the users. You have to use role collections in both global and sub-account. And in the sub-account, on the sub-account level, you can map this role collection to the groups. You have security groups here, and you can map the role collection directly to a group in the Azure Active Directory or to a security group that you have defined here in the IAS. This currently works only on the sub-account level. This does not work on the global account so far. I hope that's coming soon, but here when you have the users in the global account, when you see them in the global account, maybe the shadow users, you can then assign the role collections directly here. Yeah, I hope this was something interesting on security on global and sub-account level. If you have any questions, please feel free to add some comments or, of course, to drop us a mail or drop us a message.